Hi, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today for the Women in Technology webcast, Current Status and Future. This is a webcast put on by the Society for Information Displays and in partnership with SID Education. Our guest speaker today is Tara Akhavan. She's PhD, founder and CTO of Iris Tech. Is that how you pronounce it, Tara?
Yes, exactly.
Very good. So without further delay, I will turn the floor over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Joel. Um, it's a pleasure to do this webcast with you. We will try to make it as interactive as possible. There are a few questions I'm going to ask you, so I'll introduce myself, then I'll get to know a little bit about yourself, and we will take it from there. So, as Joel mentioned, we will talk about women in technology, why it's needed, why such a category exists in almost all the conferences we attend, and what is the future, and why it's important to focus on women in technology or diversity in general. To start with, I want to welcome all of you, but also I would like to wish that we didn't need such panels or such discussions ever. Best would be the same way that we don't need men in tech, we wouldn't need women in tech. But it is as it is, and we will take it one step at a time. So let's discuss the current status and how women are doing generally in tech and some of the non-tech areas. I'll start with a quick introduction of myself. So I'm Tara Akhavan, as Joel mentioned. I'm a technologist. I have a PhD in computer vision. I'm an entrepreneur, a technology entrepreneur. I'm an immigrant. I live in Canada. I lived in 3 different countries and continents for the last 10 years. But in Canada, I'm only here for 4.5 years to start the company called Iris Tech, because I got the investment from Montreal, and that's how I moved from Vienna in Europe, where I was doing my PhD, to Montreal. I'm a woman, I'm a wife, daughter, sister, all those bring responsibilities. And just recently, I'm about to become a mom. So if you hear me running out of breath, just know that I'm 8.5 months pregnant. So when I speak fast and I get excited, I easily get out of breath. I'm the founder and chief technology officer at a startup company called Iris Tech in Montreal. Iris Tech is a software display startup company. So we work on making displays smarter with knowing more and more about the environment, and try to render the content in a way that you have better visibility, more power efficiency, and hopefully less harm on our eyes and our children's eyes when they are interacting with screens more than 8 hours per day. I'm involved at Society Information for Display. As Joel mentioned, they are the organizers of this webinar. I'm marketing vice chair since 2.5, 3 years ago. I'm volunteering there. And one of the first things that I started was to start a Women in Technology panel at SID, that we will get to talk about it in a bit more detail in a few minutes. I'm a representative of Canadian CIE Division 8. CIE is a standard for illumination and lighting and displays, and Division 8 is a display division, and I'm also volunteering, and I'm representing a Canadian member for that standard. I have a bachelor in computer engineering, a master's in AI, artificial intelligence, and PhD in computer vision and image processing, with a focus on the physiological aspects of how our eyes see. And for the last 10 years, I've been involved in startups. So I've worked for 4.5 years as a project manager and product manager in a startup. And then recently, since 5 years ago, I started my own startup. So one of the reasons, like, women in tech has become a buzzword in the last few years, but either there is a reason for it, or it's just women trying to get in better positions. Hopefully it's not the second one. There is actually a lot of research and analysis showing that when women are involved in technology startups, in companies, in big companies, it can increase the productivity and the profitability of the company by a huge margin. This is just one of the articles from McKinsey that I found recently that they published, based on, of course, you're looking at the quartile, top of quartile from left, right to left. If you look at the graph, first rank on top of the quartile, we have companies which have female, 10% female roles in line executive roles and 20% female staff in staff executive roles. And then it becomes less and less for second, third, and fourth quartile from profitability point of view in these companies. If you're curious to know the difference between line executive and staff executive, these are different companies in UK and US that the study was done on them. It can be any type of company. Staff roles, executive roles are more like HR-related, management-related roles. And seems like women are at least in the first quartile if you look at the more right graph there. We have 20% in those roles and 10% in line executive roles, which are related to product, to the technology, to the core sales of the organization, sales, marketing, other roles. So there is proof that there is higher profitability and an ROI, return of interest, return on investment in companies with more women. I have more data to share with you. Next slide. Forbes did a study on 27th of June 2018, which shows that diverse companies, and diversity in this study meant in terms of gender diversity, they product 90% more revenue and they are more profitable. There's another study from McKinsey. I put some of the links for you there because the articles are very interesting, and if you're curious, you can look into them in more detail. How the competitiveness of the company increases massively when you have more gender equality in the company, and they can outperform the competitors statistically more often. And 21% in this study, it shows that the experiences, they are profitable above the average. So these are just, you can find so many different articles and studies from very good and solid analysis which has been done on this in the last, let's say 10 years. Most of the studies that you will find, unfortunately, is only focused on US and sometimes US and UK, which seem to be doing better than some of the other countries, which is not really true. We will get into that, but at least that's the way we feel if we don't look at the information in detail. But there's just 10 very interesting facts published in another article, I think, from McKinsey as well, about the current status of what is going on in Silicon Valley in terms of women in technology and gender diversity. So with all the buzz, all the events, all the focus that was there on women in tech in the last, let's say, 5-6 years, still women only own 5% of startups. They earn only 28% of computer science degrees. Only 7% of partners on top 100 venture capital firms are women. And after a peak that happened in 1991, believe it or not, which the rate of women in computing roles was 36%, every year it's decreasing and declining. And now the women in computing roles is down to 25% from 1991. So we are going backwards. Women hold 11% of executive positions in Silicon Valley companies. And in high-tech industry, the quit rate is 41% for women versus men, which is just 17%. That on its own might not mean anything, but when you bind it with the other information about all the challenges that women have in high positions, especially in tech industry, which with male-dominated industries, it makes sense that there is a reason that they give up earlier. And number 8 is that with all the funds which are available for women-led companies, there are particular venture capitals who invest more in women. But last year, there was 1.4 billion investment happened on women-led companies, while all the rest of the investment that happened in the Silicon Valley, which is $58 billion, was invested in male-led companies. So there's a huge gap, like let's say 55 times more investment on men-led companies. Women receive lower salaries for the same job. That's not news for at least women who are working in the industry. And for women in tech industry, women in the tech industry, under age of 25, earnings on average are 29% less. Again, there are links, you can look into this, but this shows, like, bind it to, this is our current status. And then you look at why all the other statistics show that we need more women or gender diversity or equality in the industry, and see how we are doing. And sometimes in some of these categories we are going backwards, so we are not doing great. Another interesting point that I wanted to mention here is that it's not just diversity in every aspect brings value. Different opinions, different cultures, different backgrounds, different point of views always brings value to any type of business. But in the study that was done by McKinsey on the US and UK companies, it also shows that not only women are way less representative in the high roles, but in executive roles, there is also a huge bias towards women of color. So you can see in the graph that there is only 65% of the female executives are 69% actually in the first graph and 71% in the second graph are white. And then all the other categories, you can call it women of color, Asian, collectively have, let's say, around 30%. So it's diversity in every aspect which is missing, and we're going to touch base on that. And there's so many different studies that also show that it's not just gender diversity, it's ethnicity diversity, it's background, it's culture, it's language. In our startup, for example, we have 32 people, and we are from 17 different countries speaking 11 different languages. You can imagine that when we go in a meeting, everybody is looking at the problem from a very different perspective. These guys have been educated in different countries. Their problem-solving skills are very different. And so always the very interesting discussions happen in the meetings. Another point that I wanted to make on the next slide is that, so you can see based on the category, financial services, healthcare, legal, medicine, IT, how we are doing in terms of diversity. So we have in financial services, I think, and healthcare, we are still doing way better compared to IT and medicine. As much as medicine is one of those areas that women have been always very involved. And financial, we're doing 54%, which is a quite good number. When it goes to executive roles and board direction, of course, it decreases. So women are involved. They are 50% of the population. They make presence, and they occupy, let's say, 50% of the jobs. But the rank and the percentage of how many of them can also grow to the executive roles or sit on the boards, that is massively reduced. Healthcare, almost the same. Of course, there's more women there, as you can expect from the number of graduates also in those fields. But again, going to executive position, a huge drop, and then the board members, the same. Legal, we talk about medicine, and then IT or tech, which is more of our focus, is doing the worst among all of them, at least in terms of board having the say, having more a percentage. We saw before that women in the owners of startups are only 5% women all across US. So if you have questions, we are getting towards the end of the presentation, and you can please write them down so that you don't forget, and we can discuss them after the discussion and presentation. As I mentioned before, excuse me, since 2017, we introduced Women in Technology panel at Society Information Display, and the focus was to bring in very achieved women from every industry, from every field. It can be professors of universities, entrepreneurs, vice presidents or executives in big corporations. Bring them together. They can be investors in technology, and then have them discuss some of their challenges, but not only the cliche challenges that we always talk about or hear about, but mostly maybe the solutions and the lessons learned on how they made it. Challenges we will talk about it briefly. As women in technology, we might know more or less the challenges, at least based on our experience wherever we are and we are working. But I find the most important thing for me trying to grow in my career was how to deal with the challenges. It's not just to know the challenges. It's the most important part is what do you do when it comes up? When you're in a meeting and somebody accidentally makes a comment that would be okay if it was just within the boys club, but now that somebody, a woman is sitting at a table, that comment doesn't make sense anymore, or it can be categorized as sexist or racist. What do you do? So those are the discussions that are happening on the panel. We discuss career paths, so how it's less common, as we went through the statistics, to have women in leadership position, and then what do you do to be seen when the majority of the habit which is out there is to promote men over women? What do you do with less salaries, which are very common? So we've had 2 very successful years, 2 very different type of panels, depending on the panelists who are there, of course. And in 2019, for the 3rd time, we are going to have a Women in Technology panel. The Display Week event of Society Information Display happens on May 12th this year, starts on May 12th. So our panelists are not yet finalized. So I can only announce 2 of them right now, but it's very exciting. So I'm very happy about having them. That's why I'm gonna share 50% of the panel, which is finalized, with you, and the other 2, unfortunately, I cannot announce at this point. But you can follow the newsletters of SID Display Week, and you will get soon, hopefully within a month, the finalized setup of the panel and the theme of the panel. So we do have Lee Epting. She's a technology executive. She's ex-vice president in Samsung, ex-vice president in Nokia, ex-vice president in Vodafone. I think she was the first female executive in Nokia, and she was one of the first foreigners in the executive role in Samsung, if I'm not mistaken. So she has enormous amount of experience and lessons learned to share. Listening to her stories for me is very exciting. I know her for around a year now. And we do have Consuelo Valverde. She is a founder and managing partner in SVLATAM fund. It's a fund that I think they're doing their third round now, third fund. She started with focusing on technologies from Mexico, bringing in women or technologies in Mexico, trying to make diversity, every aspect of it, kind of push diversity forward. They're doing very well in terms of VC or a fund. And she has very interesting stories about how you find women entrepreneurs, how you invest in them, help them grow. Not necessarily only women, of course, every aspect, like different cultures, different backgrounds also. I'm very excited to have them on the panel this year. I just listed on the next slide some of the challenges that we can now open up the panel for you guys, and we can discuss it, we can talk about it. I've been very much in touch with the same caliber of kind of mentors that you see that will be on the panels. And these are the topics that usually come up, like how to work in an environment when we are the minority. What if a comment is made that is like feels offensive to us? How to grow to the next level when you're the minority? Are there differences between women and men? And if there are differences, how do we deal with it? So should we act more like men so that we are more accepted in the environment? Or there are a lot of interesting topics that we can discuss. Failures and how to deal with them, because we will fail, like everybody else that in their world, in their role might fail, but maybe the focus on women is more. So if you fail, you will feel more in danger because it was hard for you in an even situation to get that role to start with. Importance of mentors in that path that we are taking. What can men do to support, and what would be their motivation, and what can women do to support. So that's it, and I have only one last slide on diversity. So yes, we focused more on women in technology. What are the things we can do? We will go back to the last slide with the questions when we open the panel for discussion. So I would like to know your opinion, which one of those topics are more interesting to you, or if you have any ideas you would like to share with us. And then going back to diversity, it's so important to focus generally on diversity. It's not just women versus men. It's not a gender-based. It's every kind of colored, Asian, culture, background. They all add huge amount of value to businesses and profitability of businesses. And any business that invests in diversity has seen in few years the growth and the return on investment in that domain. So it is key for businesses to invest on any type of diversity. Just a quick wrap up about SID, since they are the initiators of this webcast, and I'm the marketing vice chair. The SID Information Display is the only professional organization focused on electronic displays and visual information. The biggest event that they have on annual basis is called Display Week, which all the big guys that make displays or screens or are involved in making screens are there. The society is a very old, mature society. I think over 60, 70 years of existence. But there is more need for women, for younger members, and more focus on career business development, because so far it has been more of a technology society, and of course diversity from everywhere. So I would like to, I'm volunteering there for 3 years. I just want to put it out there for any of you which might be interested to join SID or volunteer at SID, get a huge access to a great network of mentors, of people, of industrial partners. And of course, you can always try to learn, and it will be great for building your career, also coming up with, hopefully bumping into companies that can be your potential next step in your career. I've personally benefited very much personally from the mentor perspective, but also from a business side, for my startup. There are a lot of potential customers that I met with at SID, and since my startup is in a display industry, to work with them. Just a quick kind of statistical information to share with you is that SID, as I said, is focusing on all those 4 points that we mentioned: more women, younger blood, focus on business side, and diversity. And also there is a growth that we are very happy in the number of attendees since last year, 2019 versus 2018, already almost 10% increase in terms of the attendees who have already submitted or registered for the event. So if you haven't registered, and if you will be in around mid-May in San Jose Convention Center, please register for the Display Week. The registration is not so expensive. You can find it on the website, and it will help you get access to the show floor, the exhibitors, the technical events, the business events, some investor discussions, and it's a very diverse week, condensed week of a lot of information.
Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, everybody, and good luck. I'm gonna hang up.
Yes,
hopefully see you soon.
That baby needs some food.
Yes. Thank you. Bye. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.